Hey guys, this is going to be a video that I'm going to go over the questions in the study guide for chapter 2, since we lost some time together in class. First thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through the learning outcomes that you guys had on the second slide of your notes. It's also in your topic support guide. And I'm just going to actually answer those questions in the learning outcome order. So I'm not necessarily going to go numeric 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I'm going to go through the learning outcomes. So your possible questions that will assess learning outcome A: explain the meaning of the term ecosystem, habitat, population, community, species, biodiversity, and ecological niche. That's going to be questions 22, 29, 31, 36, 37, 39, and 49. So I'm going to go down to our first one is 22. These are going to be pretty quick. They're just going to be definitions. Um, 22. Let me pause this really quick. Okay, I'm actually going to save 22 to do with number 21. So then our next one is going to be 29. Okay, it's just a definition. So explain, it's our biggest command word. So the grader needs to be in no doubt that you know what you're talking about. Typically it can have a definition. Well, it'll definitely have a definition, but it could also have an example with it. But this is explain the meaning of the term ecosystem and biodiversity. So the ecosystem definition is really the interaction between the living and non-living. So the interaction between the living organisms and their non-living environment. Or you could also say the interaction between abiotic and biotic factors. And then just how many marks was this? 1, 2, 3. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So was it maybe 2 marks? Did I tell you in class what they were? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. The whole thing is one question. Oh, poor soul. Okay, so it's 5 marks. So you can get it from any of these. The ecosystem is linked together through nutrient cycles. Chapter 4 is all about nutrient cycles. So if you're like, I wouldn't have written that, that's okay. That's okay. You could also mention the movement of energy or nutrients through food chains or food webs. So an ecosystem is an interaction between the biotic and abiotic components and the movement of energy or the movement of nutrients or biomass through food chains and food webs. Biodiversity, so it's the number of different species in an ecosystem or in a habitat. Or you could say the relative abundance of each species in an ecosystem or a habitat. That's biodiversity. Okay, 31 is our next one. So I'm going to do succession with a different learning outcome, but explain the meaning and have one example from the marine environment, so from an oceanic environment. Niche is the role of an organism in an ecosystem, an organism's role in its ecosystem, an organism's role. Your example can be anything oceanic. Just either pick a favorite that you have and know what it does. My favorite is an orca. I could say an orca is an apex predator, in the Arctic. An orca is a carnivore and it feeds on, seals, penguins, whatever. So same thing, you could say a parrotfish eats corals. If you don't have a favorite ocean animal, remember parrotfish. My last name is Parrot, so remember parrotfish. They eat corals. Literally, they're called the coral-eating parrotfish or the coral-eating butterfly fish. All of those work. Phytoplankton, they do photosynthesis. Zooxanthellae does photosynthesis. That's its niche. A shark is a top predator. So examples of niches. 36 is our next one. Again, definition, explain the meaning, the place where an organism lives. 37, species, we did this one in class, a group of organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. 39, so population, and you need to give one example from an oceanic environment. So species are organisms that can interbreed together and have fertile offspring. A population is a group of them, a group of the same species. So the humans, we're all a population. When you throw in our dogs, or our cats or bunnies, it's called a community when you add in things that are also living but not of the same species. So population are organisms of the same species. They live in the same area and the same habitat. An example, ghost crabs on a shore, pod of dolphins, orcas in the St. Lawrence Bay, butterfly fish in a reef. Any of the orca ones, I just know because that's my animal. That's my thing. It's my jam. It's what I like. Any of those answers could be fine as long as you're correct. That's what they do. That's what a population of them is called. What's our next one? 39. Oh, was 49 not a part of this? No, it's not. Sorry, it's not. Last one was 49 for that. Okay, and define an ecological niche. It's an organism's role in its ecosystem. So that will just take us through learning outcome A, and we'll pick it up with learning outcome B. Learning outcome B, it's in two parts. It says describe each of the following interrelationships with the marine ecosystem. Mutualism, knowing corals, zooxanthellae, cleaner fish and grouper, chemosynthetic bacteria, and tube worms. For those numbers, it's going to be 5, 16, 21, 22, 27, 28, 34, and 41. And then the parasitism examples with tuna and nematodes is 23, 24, 25, 33, and 42. So we're going to start at number 5. Okay, this is a big question. Talking about mutualism. And so it says, explain the role of mutualistic bacteria. So mutualistic bacteria, I'm going to show you. They live inside your tube worms. They could also live inside mussels or live inside of a clam, like inside the shell, living inside of it. We also have vent bacteria that literally lives on the outside of the vent. It's not living inside another organism. It's living on the outside of the hydrothermal vent. So what is their role? So what do they do? And what was this? 4 marks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it would have been a 3-mark question. Explain the role. So you could look at where they live, what they do, how they do it, and then who benefits. How are they affecting their environment? So they live in riftia. They live in tube worms, but you need to say riftia. Clams, they also live in Pompeii worms, mussels, tissues, or the cells of those organisms. Okay, and you know that they live there because they are inside of it. They are feeding these organisms, these worms, these mussels and clams, bivalves. They're living inside of it. What do? They produce chemical energy. You could also say they produce organic material, or they produce carbohydrates. How do? They do it through chemosynthesis, or you could describe it. They're able to take chemicals from the hydrothermal vent and convert it or fix it into carbohydrates. Who benefits? The rest of the food chain is going to get it. Or that organic material is used as chemical energy. The organisms that they're living inside, that's who benefits. Okay, I'm back. My phone was ringing. So we just did 5. Let's go to 16. Okay. With reference to tube worms specifically, and hydrothermal vents, explain the meaning of the terms mutualism, So for mutualism, and it has to, so that's when both species benefit, you have to talk about tube worms and hydrothermal vents. So the chemosynthetic bacteria, can't just call them bacteria because we have bacteria in our body. It's chemosynthetic bacteria because they do chemosynthesis. They live inside tube worms. So you could say there, like, that they're getting protection. The bacteria are getting protection from living in the tube worms. But or you could say a specific benefit that is to the bacteria, but they're able to have like a habitat. And then what do the tube worms do? What does the chemosynthetic bacteria do once it's inside of there? So it's going to produce organic substances or glucose, or provides chemical energy for the tube worm. Both species benefit. They are dependent on each other for survival. Succession. Okay, next one is going to be 2122. Okay, state the interrelationship between coral and zooxanthellae. It's one word, mutualism. Both species benefit. Describe how the coral reef communities 10 years after the bleaching event will be predicted to differ from the ones before. This question sounds wordy, but it's not really that bad. So when they talk about communities, you have to know what that word means. It means all of your living organisms, and the organisms they're talking about are algae, fish, and coral. So this question has 3 marks. There's 3 organisms you need to talk about. There's 3 different populations. The population of algae, population of coral, population of fish. So how is it supposed to differ 10 years after the bleaching event? If I'm looking at algae, here it's starting at 0. And if I'm following this flat line, if it stayed there, that would mean no change. But it's a little bit higher, actually. So there is an increase in algae cover. And it says like proportional change. How does it change compared to itself? It increased. So increase in algae cover. Coral cover. Coral's my blue color, starting at 0, plummets and stays down. So that's a big, compared to its baseline, that's a big decrease in coral cover. The amount of fish species, which are pink, again, starting at my baseline 0, they go down and down, and there's another decrease in fish species. So this question isn't hard. Sometimes students are like, I don't know which ones to talk about. It's the communities, so you need to know it's all of the organisms. Yes. There we go. Okay, great. What number was that? That was 21, 22. 27 is our next one. Okay. You see green algae. It's found in the tissues of coral species. They have a mutualistic relationship. What is their name? Zooxanthellae. Know how to spell that. You could call it zooxanthellae. You can call it zooxanthellae, but you need to know how to spell it. You need to know how to spell it for sure. Spelling does matter with that. Zooxanthellae. I mean, if you like flip the E and the A at the end, or only do one L, whatever, but you do need to know that organism. And that is the algae that lives inside the tissues of your coral species. So this is 27 and then 28 as well. Describe what it does. So again, how do they help each other? Describe the mutualistic relationship. Algae perform photosynthesis, and the algae produce. They don't. It says ignore. Okay, don't say they produce food. They produce nutrients. Nutrients are things like, and that's just chapter 4, nutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, carbon, magnesium. Those things are nutrients because those things will help us build our amino acids. They'll help us build proteins. It's not nutrients that they're making. They use nutrients to help them make organic material or help them make carbohydrates. So the algae will produce oxygen, glucose, carbs, or the word organic compounds. And Cambridge loves organic compounds. Corals provide protection for the zooxanthellae, for the algae. And they also, because corals are calcium carbonate, this is the formula for it. It's CaCO3. I'm sure that's backwards too, so let me flip this. CaCO3 is calcium carbonate. And with that CO3 there, the algae actually can use that as a form of carbon dioxide. It's not CO3 when they take it in, it's CO2, but when they do need to have carbon dioxide in order to do photosynthesis. So having an organism that's literally a carbon-based organism which is redundant because everything that's alive is a carbon-based organism. But having an organism that has a shell that's like calcium carbonate will help the algae get the reactants that they need to do photosynthesis. All right, that is 28. And we're looking at 34. Mutualism, both organisms benefit, and then you need to give a marine example. So either your chemosynthetic bacteria and tube worms, the cleaner fish, and a shark. The cleaner fish's name is a wrasse, W-R-A-S-S-E. I think it's an E, wrasse. Or your zooxanthellae and corals. Those are different options you could use for mutualistic relationships. Oh, excuse me. That was 34. Now we need 41. With reference to a named marine organism, so you got to give an example, explain the meaning of the following terms. Okay, so I know whatever year this question was from, it's like 4 years ago at least. They have a mistake on it. I'm just gonna say it now. If you hear it, you hear it. If you don't, for some reason, Cambridge used to refer to symbiosis as mutualism. So symbiosis is just a relationship between two organisms, period. So different type of symbiotic relationships. You could be mutualistic, and then both species benefit from the relationship, or parasitistic, and one species benefits and another is harmed. But initially, what they said with reference to an example, explain the meaning. I only know this because I looked at the answer key, and I know that has since been corrected. You don't see symbiosis anymore, and they're referring to mutualism. So I crossed it out and I put mutualism because I know that's what they were meaning. So I saw the answers, but it wasn't correct. So where it says symbiosis, I don't want you thinking symbiosis. You can't give an example. I guess you could give an example, but it wasn't what they were looking for. So mutualism is a relationship between both species where two species where they both benefit, and then you have your traditional examples that you need to know. Okay, let's go backwards now. We're going to do the parasitism ones from Learning Outcome B. So 42 goes with that. It's a relationship between two species where one is harmed. And some questions like you to say which one is harmed, which would be the host. And then one benefits, and then you would want to say the parasite. You can put that in parentheses, and that would be great. You want to give an example, so you could say fish, lice, and a host. Oh, excuse me. You could say fish lice and mackerel, fish lice and tuna, fish lice and grouper, whatever. A roundworm or a nematode in fish, so like a nematode and grouper. Or like Lilia even said, nematodes have their own nematodes, so you can't be wrong with the fish you put in there as long as it's a marine example. Okay, so that's 42. We're going to go to 33. If you wanted to write these down, the ones for parasitism are 23, 24, 25, 33, and 42. And we're also going to talk about number 26 in this section. Okay, so 33, with reference to a specific example of a marine environment, explain the meaning. So parasitism, one organism benefits, and that is going to be your parasite at the expense of the host or while the other is harmed. That's your host. A marine example, tuna and nematodes. Great. And that's a 2-mark question, and it wouldn't take you 2 minutes to write that at all. 30 is 20. Let's do 26. Okay, so 26 has both. Mutualism and parasitism are 2 examples of relations between species. Great. Describe each of these relationships and give an example. So describe the relationship. So they're both a symbiotic relationship. In mutualism, this is like their definition. In mutualism, both species benefits. In parasitism, one species benefits, and that's the parasite at the expense of the other, which is the host. I think I spelled expense wrong. It's fine. If you use the word host, I believe you got an extra mark. An example. So for the example, you're going to get a mark by saying both of the species names. So for mutualism, you could say, coral organism and zooxanthellae benefit. The benefit to species one. So the coral gets organic material, and the zooxanthellae then has a habitat or gets carbon dioxide from the coral. Parasitism, same thing. You want to say a species name. So tuna and nematode. Benefit to the parasite, the nematode gets nutrients and organic material or chemical energy from the host. And then your host, which would be like the tuna, loses organic material, loses chemical energy, and could possibly also get diseases from it. That's 26. 25, 24, and 23, they all go together. Okay. So define the term parasite. It's an organism that lives in, so it could be like an endo-parasitic relationship or on an ectoparasitic relationship, a host, and the parasite benefits at the expense of the host, or the host is harmed. That's 2 marks for the definition is weird. We see a life cycle of a parasite in a fish. It's the fish eye fluke. This parasite has several hosts. So I did the different hosts in different colors. I'm sorry, I didn't. I did the different scenarios in different colors, but they have 3 hosts. They have a bird, they have the snail, and then they have the fish. The parasite completes its life cycle in the intestines of a fish-eating bird. So I just put pelican there for you to be thinking, okay, something like a pelican, a fish-eating bird. We don't, hey, look at that fish-eating bird. Like, we don't say that. So I just try and put real words to it. Okay, so what's important is if the parasite wants to survive, it needs to find itself inside the intestines of a bird that eats fish. That's what it needs to do. So this is kind of how it starts. We have the fish-eating bird. Great. Bird poops, and they poop in the water, or even if they poop on the edge of the water, it can run off. What is happening? Hold on. Oh, okay. For a second, I didn't think it was recording. That would have been good. So good. Okay, I'm back. So bird poops in the water, great. Well, now we have the larvae of the parasite floating in the water. The snail's job is to break down fecal material or dead things or decomposing things. So it's going to feed on the poop. So now the parasite is inside the snail. The snail can get eaten by the fish, or the parasite can attach itself to the fish in the water. So now we have, again, the larvae are still in the water. And if the fish are eating snails, or the fish, are either in the water, if the larvae attach to the fish, or they ingest it, then it's inside the fish. And then your bird eats it, and we start it all over again. So the presence of flukes in fish can lead to reduced vision or even blindness. How could this benefit the parasite? So I said again, the parasite needs to find itself in the intestines of a fish-eating bird if it wants to continue its life cycle. So if a fish is pretty blind, how could that benefit the parasite? The parasite needs to be eaten by a bird to complete its life cycle. And it's not just eating the parasite, it's eating the organism that is housing the parasite, which is the fish. So how will that help? Well, if the fish is blind, it's not going to be as coordinated. It's not going to really know its surroundings as well. It's going to have a higher advantage of getting eaten by a bird, maybe not being able to see it. And therefore, we're going to have a higher chance of the parasite reaching its host because the parasite needs to be inside of a bird. Most parasites do not kill their host. With reference to 7.1, so this chart, suggest why doing so, I mean killing the fish, would be a disadvantage for the fish eye fluke, and that's the name of the parasite. Why would it be a disadvantage, specifically referencing that picture, for that parasite if it killed the fish? Okay. And it doesn't even have to be, these answers don't even have to be killing the fish because there are multiple hosts. So if they kill the bird, if the parasite killed the bird, then it's not going to release eggs. It's not going to release the parasite's eggs. If you're dead, you're not going to be decomposing. You're not going to be defecating. You're not going to be pooping or peeing or anything like that. So those larvae aren't going to come out of their body and then find themselves, in a new life cycle. The fish needs to be alive with nutrients and organic material for the parasite to feed off it and take, chemical energy from. If they're not alive, there's nothing that they can take. You don't want to kill your host. If they kill the fish, well, then there's less chance of the parasite going to the next host because a fish has to be eaten by a bird. A dead fish is not going to really be eaten by a bird if it's just freely floating there. I think birds would have a little bit more intellect, like, I'm not going to mess with that one because why is it floating? And then if the snail dies, and I believe you just needed one of these. You just needed one answer. If the snail dies, same thing. It's not going to release the larvae. And so that was 24, 25. And 23? Yes. Okay. So that actually we're done with A and with B on that one. And I'm going to take a short break.